Hi, my name's Rick Cheston. I lead the LivDem team at UE Bristol. Welcome to this. This is, I think, the third of the video blogs that we've done. What I want to do today is to talk about recruitment. Now, yeah, you might think recruitment's quite a bland, easily done thing, not something you've necessarily got to think a lot about. Well, I guess the message I want to get across today is actually no. I think recruitment is a really, really important thing, and it encompasses an awful lot of different things, and I think it needs to be really worked on. Sometimes I think what we do when we're delivering services and intervention is think, well, the most important thing is to get the time during the intervention right. So if I'm delivering a group, it's the time from when the group starts to when it finishes, and maybe a little bit before and afterwards, but essentially that's it. Actually, that's far from it. It's much more than just the time that you spend in contact with your clients, with the participants in a group, that matters, and that's really what I want to talk about here. So look, what is this? Because what we want to do is we want to maximize recruitment, not just in the sense of making sure that as many people as possible, everybody who could come to the group gets a chance to come to the group. Of course you want to do that, but it's also about making sure that when people come to a group, that they're excited. Now, of course, you're always going to be slightly apprehensive when you go to a group for the first time, but that there's an element of excitement about this, that people, when they come to our group, that they and their families think, this is an important thing, it's a valuable thing. This is just as important, for instance, as having financial advice, as having the opportunity, if you have Alzheimer's disease, to take Aricept or one of those medications. That this is a core service. This is something I'm going to get something out of. It might be difficult, it might be challenging, but I'm going to get something out of this. Because that's a really important thing that we want people to do. So it's not just, as I say, about increasing the throughput in it. We want to create this positive vibe. We want to get people looking forward. It's the atmosphere around it that we want to get that vibe going, guys. So how do we do that? How do we influence it? Well, that's really what I want to talk about today. Because I think the first way that we get our participants excited about it is to get our colleagues excited about it, to get them thinking that this is a really important thing, this is a core part of what we do. Our groups they're both a public event because we invite lots of people into it. They're also quite private. It's often very hard for our colleagues to know what are you doing in the group? What are you actually doing? So we want them to be excited. What do people get out of this? Because they don't see the changes necessarily before and afterwards in the people we work with. They may only hear about it if something crops up that's not going well. So we want to get people excited about it. We want to get our colleagues excited about it. And I think to a large extent that also depends on us being excited about it. Now, one of the lessons I learned relatively early on in my career, I had a group analyst who was giving me supervision. I would go along to this, and I'm quite a diffident guy often, and she would say, she was talking about how I was communicating. And I would say things along the lines of, well, I think these groups are important, but not everybody benefits. It's, I can't promise, they're not for everybody, and sometimes people come and they decide it's not for them. And she would say, well, look, Rick, it doesn't sound like you value what you're doing. It doesn't sound like that you're fully convinced that what you're doing is important for people. And I go, well, actually, I do think by and large most people. So her message to me was, look, I've got to change how I come across, and I've got to market myself, not just with the people that I'm meeting, but with all my colleagues. Because if they're excited, if they value it, then they will pass that on to the people that we're working with. That they will communicate that excitement and that value to our participants directly. And then that's important, because if people think this is going to be useful and valuable, they will commit themselves to it in a way that they simply won't commit to if what they're getting is much more of a sort of neutral or even sometimes negative thing. So we need to be really focusing on how we get that invest to help people to invest themselves, because then people get more out of the course. The course, not just themselves, but they come and they come consistently and regularly, and they bring themselves to the course, and that is a very different beast from a course that's has people in it who aren't really sure why they're there or what they're going to get out of it, or facilitated by people who are themselves unsure or coming across as being unsure. So let's think about some practical things about doing that. If you've been on the training, you will know I use this phrase, dynamic administration, a lot. What does it mean? Because I love it. It's a great phrase. It's administration because this is what we do around the course to set it up and to make it work well. It is administrative. It is often the things that we don't get time to do. If I have a to-do list, it's often going to be the thing down at the bottom of my to-do list. Well, if it's at the bottom of your to-do list, raise it to the top. And it's dynamic because that's the atmosphere that we have to be. We have to be active, dynamic in how we throw ourselves and our energy into doing this. Now, in talking about this, I'm going to be assuming that you may well be working in the UK. I'm going to assume that you're probably working in the NHS, but I know there are people outside the UK who deliver LivDem, and people inside the UK but who are working for charities and so on. So you may need to sort of think around this. But I think these ideas are still going to be relevant for you, but you're going to have to think about your local context. So the first thing we have to do is we have to sell this to the gatekeepers, the people who are, if you like, organising the gate through which our participants march. LivDem's on the far side. They're the ticket managers, the gatekeepers, they're the entry clerks, they're the whatever metaphor you want to do. And they could be anybody. They could be people who are, if you work in the NHS and you're delivering, then lots of care is organised around care plans or well-being plans. It could be the person writing that. It could be the person who's making and communicating the diagnosis. It can even be before that. The gatekeeper is the person who is the first point of contact with somebody when they enter a memory clinic. Maybe the person doing the assessment, and that person is going to be saying, look, we're going to do an assessment. This is one of the outcomes of the assessment, and this is what our service delivers. So it could be almost anybody in your service, and that broader service has a role as a gatekeeper, as a first point of contact. But even if they're not actually the ones to make the referral into your service, to point them in your way, they're still going to be important, and it's still important that you communicate with them and that you sell it, and you sell that energy, and you sell the value, and you sell the commitment, because they're going to want to know a number of things. They're going to want to know, well, what sort of all the people who come into, let's say, a memory clinic, who are the people who are going to be ideal for a LivDem course? Is it everybody, or is it some people? Now, we'll go into that and what makes a good person later on. Something we cover in the training. It's something that's in the manual. I'm not going to talk huge about it in a minute, but they need to know who you're looking for. But they also need to know what are going to be the benefits. What is this person going to get out of this? Now, we tend to talk about the benefits as being less frightened about dementia, being more able to talk about dementia, and being more open about it, and making more changes in your life, and having a higher level of self-esteem and self-confidence. But there are lots of other ways to think about this. I will put in the link to this. I'm pretty sure on YouTube I can put a link on it. In the link, I'll put a link to a paper that we brought out a couple of years ago from one of our annual surveys, where we asked we, the LivDem team, asked you guys, facilitators, what did you think were people's benefits? So if you want to see what other facilitators think of the benefits, you can have a look at our paper. But you need to be communicating that. Who's going to benefit? Who's ideal? And what are they going to get out of it? So that's what you've got to be selling to the gatekeepers. You think about, if you haven't already done it, think about putting together a flyer, a leaflet. Now, your organisation may well already have its own way of doing that, have its own marketing people, get them on board. If you contact our team, we've got a few that people have sent to us that we can send on to you if you want ideas. Leaflets, flyers. So the gatekeepers can have those, but they can be available in the waiting rooms, almost anywhere where somebody who might think about coming to the group can gain access to them. And again, have a good think about that, that it's simple, it's straightforward, and gives people the practical information that they need in order to be able to access your course. Gatekeepers also going to need to know when this is available. In an ideal world, it would be nice to say, look, we're going to run 3 groups starting on this date and this date and this date, or however many groups you do. Now, diaries are difficult things to negotiate and to set it up, and actually I can appreciate to do that in advance is often difficult. But even if you're able to say, look, we run groups in the spring and the summer, or we do them starting in March and starting in October, that whatever it is, but being able to communicate when these happen and when you need to get the referrals in by, so that you can process them and you can contact people and you can set this up. You know, even if you need to change it later on, make sure that people know when it's going to be and where it's going to be and how many people roughly will be involved, so they know the basic pragmatics of it. When you do that, we're embedding this LivDem course in the referral pathway for those local services, and so, as I said earlier, so that it's seen as a vital and inherent and important part of those services. If there is a pathway, actually physically make sure that it's written into there. A lot of organisations and CCGs will have their own versions of pathways. If you can get it formally in there, do get it in there. Important idea, manage our managers. Now, I've spent a lot of my career in the NHS trying to avoid management as much as possible and to stick away from managerial meetings because I wanted to get out there and do my job. And sometimes if I thought managers knew what I was doing, they wouldn't want me to do it. This was not a very helpful attitude that I had back in those days. My earlier self was probably could have learnt a few lessons about this, but one of the important ones is to manage your managers. And the important thing here is that your managers may know of the existence of a LivDem course, but they probably don't know what's coming out of that. And you need to be telling them what is coming out of that. Now, that can take lots of forms. If you do formal evaluations, and we've got information about formal pre and post measures you can use, that's great. If you don't want to do those things, that's fine. You can feed things back in other ways, particularly management. I think really, they get lots of different, changes in measure scores. That's fine. But a nice quotation, somebody said, I really enjoyed the course. It's helped me and I feel like I've changed a lot. I've got a lot of benefit from it. Even if somebody just passing you in the corridor on their way out of a group tells you that, write it down, keep a record of it. And when you get a few of them, pass them up your managerial line. Your managers need to value what you're doing so that they can sell it to their managers, who in turn can sell it to the commissioners. So pass the information up the chain of command, if you like. Manage your managers, manage their expectations, help them to understand what you're doing and what the benefits are. And do that actively as much as possible. Now, again, I know referral routes change, and for many services, the way they set up a group is that referrals are made in, and not everybody meets potential participants before the group starts. I would recommend really heavily that if that's the case, you really try and make an effort to be in touch with people before the group starts. if it's a phone call, or if you can do a video call, that's even better. Ideally though, have a face-to-face meeting. Go and see people and talk to them so that they understand what's coming, and you can answer any of their queries or concerns. You can work out the practical details of how they're going to get to that first meeting. And again, so you're going to sell your information to people. And again, revisit, have a look. It really helps to go back. Often we generate services will have their standard letter. And else, managers will say, well, we have a standard letter. Dear Mrs. So-and-so, please, your appointment is at so-and-so, at so-and-so. Here's a little bit of information, and off you, and it's not enough. Come on, that is not enough. If you were on the receiving end of that, you're not going to feel valued. You're not going to feel that you're being recognised as an individual, and you're not going to feel enthusiastic. And go back to my first point. You're not going to feel like you want to invest yourself in this because you know that you're just being treated like a bit of bureaucracy, bureaucratic process. So revisit that. Have a look at it. Add in, our website. One of the reasons we created that website was to be able to communicate to people who might be interested in coming along to the course about what it would be like. So, actively go back to them, see if you can revisit that, so that when the first thing that people know about the group, the letter, whatever they're going to be referring to, that is communicating in the way you want it to communicate. And think what it would be like for you if you were to receive this letter. Is this a group you would want to go to? So a few pointers there of things to do. It's a very complex area, but just come back to this basic point. The success of running a group is as much due to what you do around the group as it is to what you do inside the 75 or 90 minutes of a LivDem course. So it's worthwhile putting just as much time into your dynamic administration around the course. And as a final point, if you do come up with a good information leaflet or a nice leaflet or things you fed back to your manager, please copy us in. Obviously, we don't want to know client details and names and so forth, so make sure it's anonymous. But it helps us because we also have to negotiate with our managers. But also it helps us because we're able to pass it on to other people. We're only able to pass on flyers and information because people have taken the time and trouble to give them to us in the first place. So if you do some of these things, pass it on. If you get a good tip, if a good way that I haven't mentioned, and you think, hold on, this other way really works, let us know, please. We try to have this idea of we're a big community of practice, and we're passing this on. We're passing this information on. So if you have ideas, get back to us. Our website. Where we are on email. Get in touch with us. Okay, guys. Good luck setting up a group. Good luck running it, and look forward to hearing back from you all. Take care. Bye bye.